John, welcome this evening, this Wednesday evening, man. How are you doing? It's been
Um,
a couple weeks, man.
yeah, it's good. Good to be back. Good to have you back
Yeah.
from your travels.
Well,
As you
I
can see
was,
behind me, a beautiful.
yeah, I was gonna say I was kind of near your neck of the woods, a
That's
little
right.
bit. Everyone, I was out in Southern California, which is not Vegas, but it's close.
Yeah. No, you were in Pacific time zone, same time
That's right.
zone. So that was good. As you can see, we have a lovely evening here in Las Vegas behind me.
Man, I got to tell you, you never told me you live on the top of Caesar's Palace.
I
Like
know. People just assume that they just
somehow
assume
I
that
didn't get
this
that.
is where I live.
I didn't get that in the
Everyone who
address.
lives in Vegas lives on the strip. Everyone kind of assumes that. So I figured, I'll just play it up and put a background in. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is my living room. I just kind of hang out here atop Caesar's Palace.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're just taking a break from being on the floor, as a pit boss,
That's
which
right.
I think you've told
You
everyone that's
know,
your job, right?
that like I'm also a DJ at a day club, the Encore Day Club. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
buddy. Well, listen, everyone, welcome. Tonight, we're talking about the mockumentary. And
Yeah.
John, this is a topic that you brought up. And it's one of those, it's like, wow, why didn't we think of that at first? And we're still in the early phases of our video cast. But John, what is it that you wanted to say with the mockumentary? Why was this a topic that you wanted us to talk about?
Well, I think it's one of those I'd call it genre, if you will, or
Yeah.
style of movies, right? That people don't really talk about a lot because there's not a lot of them out there, really, that have become mainstream, so to speak. And as a little kid, I loved watching like National Geographic and Jacques Cousteau on TV. I just thought those kinds of documentaries were just super cool. I loved
Yeah.
them because, and I like books. I love like nonfiction books because they had more pictures. And I saw my first film that was a mockumentary, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, as a genre,
Yeah.
as a style, it's just so funny.
So what is it? Let me just jump in. What is a mockumentary specifically?
Yeah. So the way I would describe a mockumentary, I mean, there's a definition for it, right? A
Yeah,
mockumentary is basically a fake documentary,
yeah.
or as you may call a docu-comedy.
Yeah,
It's a type of a film, even television shows nowadays, right? Like The Office, for example,
yeah,
is one that depicts like fictional events, but is presented as a documentary style.
yeah,
So you don't quite know if it's real, if it's fake,
yeah.
and they're my favorite. Like they're one of my favorite genres of film that there is because I have some near and dear films I just absolutely love. They're hilarious.
And what was the one that got you hooked on the
You
mockumentary?
know, the first documentary I ever saw was Spinal Tap. I actually have a little
Yeah.
surprise today
Uh-oh.
because they actually have a VHS tape
Oh,
of
wow.
Spinal Tap.
Whoa.
The
Put that
actual
closer to the camera so we can see.
Look at that. The actual
Oh,
VHS
wow.
tape, you can kind of see it there
Yeah.
of Spinal Tap. I actually have this copy. This was the first movie that I saw as a mockumentary. I must have saw, I think I saw it like in junior high. I forgot. My dad was a
Yeah.
huge fan of it,
Yeah.
and I just laughed. It was so funny, and it
So
got me hooked on
what
him.
makes it funny? Like what as opposed to a comedy like more slapstick comedy like
Yeah,
Airplane or Naked
it's a
Gun or
parody.
something.
Yeah, it's kind of like a parody style. So they're clearly making fun of something, right? Whatever the subject matter is, like in this case, it was like a rock band,
Yeah.
right? Who, we all love rock,
Yeah.
heavy metal bands, right? And they're just completely making a parody of the very typical metal musician would be like, and
Yeah.
their personality and their goofy traits, and they overdo it and make it
Yeah.
just funny because it's like it's an extreme parody. But
Yeah.
the unusual part, and we'll talk more about, is these guys actually played the music and sang the songs.
Yeah.
Um, but it was just so over the top that it's just so funny.
So as opposed to, there's so many, there's rom-com, romantic comedies. There's comedies you and I
Mhm.
love a lot from the 80s, 16 Candles, obviously Pretty in Pink, that are obviously fictional
Yep.
characters based on, kind of real life situations and whatnot. But what is it about the specific part of this kind of documentary format that's entertaining, I guess. So you find, some of them are not always funny. The Office can have some serious moments, for example.
Sure.
But what
Sure.
is it like that you would say, okay, tonight I feel like a comedy, but I want a mockumentary? Like what is
Yeah.
causing that decision?
Yeah. I think some of my favorite mockumentaries are my favorite comedies, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. Like they make me laugh. Like I
Okay.
just whenever I just need a really good laugh, it is because most of the mockumentaries I kind of lean into, you made a good point. Like with The
Yeah.
Office, there's some very serious and emotional moments within The Office, whether it's the US version or the English UK version. But
Yeah.
some of these, like Spinal Tap, I mean, there's no drama in this movie. It's
Yeah.
like 100% slapstick, funny, satirical humor that,
Yeah.
whenever I need to laugh, I can turn it on and I can go to any part of it and
Mhm.
just start laughing.
But like, for example, when you watch Pretty in a Pink, right? It's a
Uh,
comedy. But what
yeah.
is it about the mockumentary that it sounds like you have the same result, which you're laughing, you're being entertained, but that style, like what is it about that style that uh
Yeah.
or that
I
genre
guess
that
I would say, yeah, it's just, I think I said, like I said before, I think it's just that it's such a parody.
yeah.
And it's making fun of a topic, right? Like Pretty in Pink, there's a lot of funny bits to it, and a lot
Hmm.
of like traditional comedies, lots of funny parts. And I think a mockumentary shares a lot of that. There's just like a
Yeah.
lot of like just straightforward humor. But
Yeah.
I think what makes the mockumentary different is that it's set up to be real. Like the
Hmm.
people in Spinal Tap, like it's supposed to be like an actual documentary, which
Yeah.
I think layer that over the top of like a comedy that's supposed to be this sort of overarching, serious documentary about this serious band from the UK. There's just something hilarious about that that's different than a traditional comedy. That it makes me laugh. Every
Yeah.
time.
I agree with you completely because I think it's very hard to do as opposed to a comedy movie. That's my feeling,
Mm,
right? This is just all hearsay and conjecture. But I think that's why you don't see that many of them. I think most people, I said, hey,
right.
give me your top 10 mockumentaries. They'd have to think about it. Whereas if I said,
Yeah.
hey, what are your top 10 comedy movies? Oh, okay, Ferris Bueller's and,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And I think it's a very unique
Yeah.
format and it has to be done well because, yeah, you're playing with real life situations and how good it is depends upon how closely you can mimic and that authenticity, and that's
Yeah.
something I love
Yeah.
about it when they reach those worlds. It's this is a good example. I heard Steven Tyler of Aerosmith saw Spinal Tap and he did not get it at all. Like he was so close to it that he's like, I don't
Yeah.
understand. Why is this funny?
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
band, they're doing
Yeah.
this. Like, and I thought that was a brilliant almost compliment to the director
Yeah.
and obviously the actors that you don't know what's real or what's fake.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's that style. And here's a good example. Like the movie that was been, I thought was very innovative was Borat, or even his
Oh
follow-up
yeah.
Bruno,
Yeah. Yeah.
which it was fake, but even in the people, it was like almost the next level where people that they were interacting with didn't know it was fake.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like a mockumentary in a mockumentary.
Yep. 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 That was a very it was almost like punked, or
Yeah,
a little bit like punked slash with Jackass with like a
yeah,
comedy. Yeah, that was really unique because it was kind of a mockumentary, but it was the half people didn't even know what was going on. I thought this guy was
yeah,
actually a real person. So yeah, therein is very different. And they're
yeah,
just, like I said, I you don't see a lot of them. And you made a really good
yeah,
point. It's a sort of underrated genre.
yeah,
I guess that's why maybe for me it's like this little sort of small community who loves
hmm,
mockumentaries, maybe because you don't see a whole lot of them out there.
yeah,
And even there's some that are just really bad. Like there are some like I don't think
yeah.
really they're
Well,
like direct to DVD, but there's some
yeah.
really great ones out there.
Well, I think one feeling because, and especially with the Sasha Cohen who did it with Borat and whatnot, but
Mm,
even in
mm,
some of the other like The Office, for example, especially the UK
Yep.
version with Ricky Gervais,
Yep.
was just, he was so brilliant at making everyone feel awkward. I think that's the word, like that awkward
Yep.
honesty. It's like
Yep.
he puts life in your face. You're looking at your own
Yep.
shit in a way. Like he just rubs your
Yep.
face in it. And I think for some
Yep.
people, it gives that disturbing, like, I guess you could call it, it's just so awkward that it's like, it's too real, man.
It's
I want to
you
see a
winch
regular.
there was so many scenes in The Office with Ricky Gervais, especially when you just wince because you're like, oh, that's just really
Yeah.
awkward situation. And you're kind of like, oh, but he's so good at that. I mean,
Yeah.
compared to the American version of The Office, Ricky Gervais, he just nailed that. David Brent was just so awkward, way more than Michael Scott was kind of funny awkward,
Yeah.
where David Brent, he was just, oh my goodness, wincing.
Yeah.
But there was so many, even in those mockumentaries of a paper
Yeah.
company, there's
Yeah.
so many funny parts. Oh my god, so
Well, I think
funny.
it's this humor masquerading as seriousness. And I think
Mm,
it's just like
yeah.
any, type of music or movies or whatnot. It is a very specific style of humor, you could
Yeah.
say.
Yeah,
Just like
it
some,
is.
comedians have a, more goofy, like Steve Martin way, and then you have like a Dave Chappelle, which tends to be a little more insightful, maybe a little more not
Yep.
preachy, but
Yep.
I would say intelligent, but it's just a different style. But
It
this,
is.
but why have they sustained? The mockumentary is still going on. It hasn't
Mhm.
died out.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think it's as accessible as a straight comedy movie, but
Yeah.
I think there's something there with the authenticity. So when to me, I think when it nails it, and then anyone who's related to that world, like I think, just can totally appreciate it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I have really good friends of mine and Carla's that we get together with, and we just start reciting lines
yeah,
from some of these movies because we know them so well. We've seen them so many times because they're so funny
yeah,
and they're so good that they become like you become like ultra fans of
oh, for
some of these
sure,
films that you will always love. And
yeah.
and they never go out of style, never kind of lose their edge. They're always really really really
Yeah.
good.
Well, you had, from the kind of the roots, as we talk a little bit about, where did it start? Where did this kind of style come out from?
Yeah, I think
And
there were some that, I mean, and you did some good research on this,
yeah,
Scott. You
there
actually,
was,
I was looking through your notes. I'm like, oh my god, I didn't realize.
well,
I remember the Woody Allen movie.
yeah,
I think it was
take the
called
money
Take the
and
Money
run.
and Run. It's
Yeah,
really funny. I've
yeah,
seen that movie.
uh-huh.
It's really
Yeah. He
funny.
plays like a
But some of the other
fictional
ones are.
criminal. Yeah,
Oh yeah, and he's this is like at the height of his movie career in the '60s, and it's such a hilarious movie. But there's a lot of them that you found.
yeah.
Your research was
There
really
was,
good.
from 1938. There's Orson Welles' radio show War of the Worlds, which
Yeah,
is, and
yeah,
at the time they didn't call it a mockumentary. That's more of a
yeah.
recent term that was coined in the 80s.
Hmm.
But that was one of the earliest, kind of, I'd say, almost
Yeah,
precursor to what we know as the mockumentary. Um,
yeah.
there was even, I thought, an example that they listed in some of the research we did was A Hard Day's Night by the
Yeah,
Beatles.
I thought you'd bring that. I thought you'd
Yeah,
bring that one up. Yeah, yeah,
1964. But and it's
yeah.
kind of like a documentary style, but it's
Hmm.
with the Beatles, so it's a comedy, right? And I thought that was, and it's still, I think, even Spielberg and others point to it as very innovative. And I think you
Yeah,
have to do it, just like many times in comedy, you're almost like naked on the stage. And I think with the director, uh it's a very fine line between like a total disaster, where maybe in comedy, because you can leverage a very known situation or something, or you can lose it in the script. But I think it's just very difficult to do. And I know, for example, Ben Stiller, famous actor and also
hmm,
director, what got him turned on to movies was watching Spinal Tap.
Mm.
what I heard, through his interviews is he saw it and he's like, this is what I want to do. And,
Yeah.
then started on his career and whatnot, and obviously insanely successful. But that style of comedy, I find to be, intelligent. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
the other stuff is dumb, but if I see Airplane and it's just a different style, but I find the mockumentary, it's more like an intricate food or a song that has a lot of
Right.
layers to it. Sometimes you have to spend more time with it, but there's a lot to it.
Yeah. And there's some directors that have just done really well with it. I mean, Woody
Yeah.
Allen did Take the
Oh
Money and
yeah.
Run. He did Zelig, which is in 1983,
Yeah.
it was just absolutely hilarious movie
Yeah.
too. It's so funny. There's just some people that have done it really well over the years,
And
that
who's
really,
who's
really
one?
well.
Who's the director? Like you would say the all-time director for a
Well,
mockumentary.
when I think about mockumentaries, right, in like the modern era,
Yeah.
I think Christopher Guest.
Yeah.
Like first and foremost, Christopher Guest. He didn't direct Spinal Tap. That was directed by Rob Reiner, but
Yeah.
he was a writer. He was one of the writers of Spinal Tap. He was one of the actors and performers. So when I think about like the best directors of mockumentaries, I go right to Christopher Guest because of his, he had the Spinal Tap from 1984, which we've been talking about, which was basically, as per Christopher Guest, a lot of the dialogue was completely ad libbed. It was totally improv, right? All the actors were really competent musicians
Yeah.
in that film. They all sang. They actually released an album, and they could sing, all of them, and play the music really, really well. But then you fast forward almost 10 years, and one of my favorite films of all time came out in 1996, which is Waiting for Guffman. And it was written by Christopher Guest and Eugene Levy, who's lately of Schitt's Creek fame.
Huge. Yeah. American Pie
Huge, right?
series. Yeah.
American Pie, all of those. He was one of the writers. Christopher Guest directed it, but again, it was about this. Christopher Guest played this guy named Corky, who was this amateur director living in a small town in Missouri, putting on a play about their 150th anniversary. And it is flat out one of the funniest movies I've ever seen in my life. Flat out. And then he went on with almost the same cast in
Yep.
2000 to do Best in Show.
Yep.
And again, Christopher Guest directed and wrote with Eugene Levy.
And that micro world there was all about the dog shows.
Yeah.
And that's
it was
and it's that
a
micro
ridiculous
world.
dog show.
And I think that's what and there's characters, and I think it's a format. So if you enjoy that documentary style format where it's much different than just a straight up, fictional script.
It does. It tells a story, right? Like it tells a story, but in documentary version. So you're telling a story, but you're sort of following, like in Waiting for Guffman, it was about Corky St. Clair, the main character, who is the director, Christopher Guest, who was putting on this show, and the trials and tribulations of putting this show together in this very, very small town of Blaine, Missouri, which is actually filmed in Texas. I have some friends that actually went there to see the place where they filmed it. And in the characters, I mean, it's always a lot of the same characters from, Christopher Guest, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Fred Willard, Parker Posey was in it, Bob Balaban, lots of great actors. And then and they were also in Best in Show, which is about, this dog show that happens in New York. And it's about like the characters that are have dogs are going to be in the show, and then about the guy who's running it, it leading up to this final showdown of the Best in Show. And then
but it's not really this. I mean, the stories, all comedies and whatever have stories, you'd say. It's the style. It's that, as I said, that seriousness that, when most people say, if you have the kids over, right? Hey guys, tonight we're not going to watch Star Wars. We're going to watch a documentary. Most people would be like, what? Like that sounds like something.
Come on, I don't want to.
You would see. I'm
going to learn. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to learn. Like I want to be entertained. And that's why I say it has a very unique play. And I found like Christopher Guest, Rob Reiner, and a lot of the writers on The Office, they brought in that. They force you to look at reality in a different way than a comedy movie or even a drama. because it's that seriousness. And I find that discomfort, or we called it awkwardness, it really causes you to look at, I think, especially with The Office, your own values on relationships, on works and career and whatnot, because you
Mm-hmm.
can't get away from it. And I think that's what that reflection causes, that awkwardness, because
Yeah.
it's life, and it's not always pretty.
Yeah,
And
it's hard to put your finger on it. Really, you bring up some
Mhm.
really good points. The Office is one where I think anybody who's worked in an office can relate to it, right?
Yeah,
Because I mean, there's all the little things that go on in a small office. So many people you and I can relate to, right? I
yeah,
mean, there's so many funny things that happen to us. It's such an unusual genre, and these guys, Christopher Guest and Eugene Levy, put on. They had three in a row. They had Waiting for
yeah,
Guffman, they had Best in Show, and then they had A Mighty Wind, which is a
yeah,
mockumentary about, of all things, folk music.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, hilarious. And then the last one that I put on my list, Scott, was one that is a very obscure movie. I actually have the VHS of this one. It's called And God Spoke, and it's basically the making of a movie. It follows these two characters that are going to write, or they wrote, and they are going to film a movie about the Bible, and it is absolutely hilarious. And it follows these two characters as they make this movie about the Bible.
Mhm.
And they're incompetent, and they have money, and they lose all their money.
Yeah,
And there's all these weird characters that show up, like Andy Dick is in it, like a
yeah,
scene. Lou Ferrigno, Eve Plum, that was Jan Brady from the Brady Bunch,
yeah.
Soupy Sales. It's just a random movie, but if you ever get a chance to see And God Spoke, you will laugh your ass off. It is hilarious.
We'll put that on the
Again,
list, man. That's great.
it is,
Yeah.
and it's just it's such a fun genre. I'm glad you let me talk about it today, because it's one that no one really does talk about. So I'm kind of giving a little bit of props to these films that I love so much, and I
Well, I think
always like to put I like to
those are great examples that, and even as I, kind of cross reference with, the type in the top mockumentaries of all time, a lot of the
yeah,
ones that you liked are a lot on the list. And I think, as you said, there's not that many that have
no,
been done well.
right,
And I think it's that documentary style that, brings in that seriousness. So you're asking yourself, is this real? I think this could be happening in my life, or I could see this. And I think that's why The
yeah,
Office was so successful. And I especially,
yeah,
personally, I'm a big fan of the UK version, because I really
mm-hmm.
thought Ricky did
Yeah,
that. I think it's maybe the first one, but that awkwardness of like, yeah, man, this is life. This is reality in this kind of docu-comedy format,
yep,
that it made me think. I think it makes a lot of people think, but it's
yeah,
also, and I agree with you, John. It also can be, when it hits right, it can be even more hilarious. It's like someone
yep,
who's not trying to be funny is always really funny. And I think
oh
it's
yeah,
that
it
style that brings it out. That's what I was saying. This format, for those that haven't seen mockumentaries, it'll elicit a different feeling than a comedy, I'd say. I don't know if
yeah,
you'd agree, John.
it I would totally agree. And it's, it's to me, I look at these, what makes me laugh about these movies the most is, I'll use an example. When I watch Spinal Tap, right there, and being a big fan of like metal music, I see like these different scenes, like when Harry Shearer's going through the airport. Remember
Mhm.
that?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
of
he goes through the
course.
metal detector, and he keeps on buzzing and
Yeah,
buzzing, and he has that. Yeah, he has a cucumber like in his pants in
yeah,
tinfoil. I mean, and then when they have the Stonehenge comes
yeah,
down,
yeah,
it's like this big. And there's so many like over the top things that when you like when you're going to a music concert and you think about what's the most crazy thing that
yeah,
could possibly happen, these style films like blow it up.
yeah,
Even like on The Office, some of the characters that were in The Office
yeah.
were just so over the top.
Well,
It's so funny.
but I think, yeah, but they're relatable too. And I think,
Sure.
um, the setting, that format brings it to that reality where you don't know if it's real
Yeah.
or not. And I
Yeah.
thought we had talked before a little bit about Ben Stiller. And if you look at
Yep.
Spinal Tap, which really made fun of that early 80s metal
Oh
scene,
yeah.
which, I mean, if
Oh
you look
yeah.
at it from that reality, it is ridiculous. And I think they
It's
were poking
ridiculous.
so much fun about the
Oh
clothes
sure.
and the lyrics and the album cover, smell
Lifestyle.
the
Yeah.
glove, these classic
Oh
scenes.
yeah.
But when you look at Zoolander from Ben
Yeah.
Stiller, who acted in it, also
Yeah.
directed it, I think funded even part of it.
Yeah.
It's so good. It makes fun of
Yeah.
that uh, fashion world, right?
Ah,
Which, I mean, come
so
on, that's why
funny.
I said like everything in life has that. There's that serious side to it, like fashion. It kind of takes itself too seriously, and so it's
Yeah.
really fun when you can see a director just kind of poke fun at it in its reality.
Sure.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's just like forcing you to look at, your own shit. And I just say that because it's like, man, that's life. Everyone does it. In Italy, they
Yep.
say everyone in the bathroom is the same, even the Pope, and
Yep.
I heard that from an Italian, and I thought it was really funny. And I mean, and it when I was going through this kind of the mockumentary, I thought of that, like, gosh, the writers and directors are making you look at reality
Yeah.
in a mockumentary way, right?
Of course. I mean, mockumentary in itself, it's like it's sort of mocking something, right?
Exactly.
Like they're mocking,
Exactly.
they're mocking the people, the
Exactly.
topic, and they're doing
Uh-huh.
it in a way that intentionally making it. It's kind of the Saturday Night Live skits, back
That's
in the
right.
day, right? That were just so funny because they were over this mocking of
Yeah.
people, an industry, a style. And I think that's what makes it fun. You have a sense of humor about being mocked a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's in a documentary style, and that's what I love about it. It's
It-
and I'm so grateful for like The Office for bringing it to
yeah.
TV,
Yeah. Well,
because
that's
there's so much there.
it's funny because I'm reading more of the notes uh that you wrote on Spinal Tap. And in addition
Yeah,
to Steven Tyler, Ozzy Osbourne did
yeah.
not know it was fake. And that's
No
how
idea.
that's
I
just
mean,
it's
mind you,
just such a
Ozzy has a
yeah.
hard time with reality as it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. Yeah,
literally,
was
I
he
was reading an
on
article.
cocaine or not,
Right, right.
or
It
whatever.
was odd because I read that article that when he first
Yeah.
saw the film,
Hmm.
he was the only person who wasn't laughing because he thought
Yeah.
it was real. He's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
why are these people
Yeah,
laughing?
yeah.
This is
Like
like the real
who
film, right?"
doesn't stick a zucchini wrapped in foil in your
Who doesn't?
spandex?
Who
Like
doesn't do
who
that? That's
why is that
obviously.
funny? Like that's just part of the game. And I actually, when I heard that quote about Steven Tyler, and I was young, and I was on a radio show or whatnot, and I went and saw that movie because I had to like see it, and I was dying of laughter. And watching Christopher Guest in his movies is brilliant, triumvirate, if
Oh
you could
yeah.
say.
Oh
And to
yeah.
me, best in show. And I don't have a pet, and I had a dog or whatnot, but I would just encourage anyone uh, who is new to kind of this genre, is that pick up one of these movies. Obviously, if you have a VCR, John can maybe ship you out a copy of one of those.
I can ship you out a copy
Our logo, if I
of the
could show you,
VHS tape.
is our new shirt
Yeah,
here.
isn't
It
it
is
great?
a
Like it is like actually it's our logo, right?
it is
That's
our
so
logo.
sweet.
And I tell you this, everyone, you're gonna laugh in a different way. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
encourage you guys to look at
I,
that.
I can't recommend them enough. If you haven't seen one of these films, I would say the first one, definitely see Spinal Tap. It's
Yep.
groundbreaking.
Yep.
It's the best. And I would say Waiting for Guffman is,
Yeah.
if you don't laugh at Waiting for Guffman, you should probably go to the hospital and see if you have a pulse, because
Well,
it's just that good.
and we'll put these on our social
Yep.
media accounts, and we're going to show some clips. And again, everyone, thank you so much. We've been growing our subscriber base on our
Yeah.
platforms, and just want to take this moment and say thank you, everyone, as we're heading into kind of the midpoint of the summer and whatnot. John and I have a lot more movies to watch as
Yep.
it starts to heat up in Vegas and in Chicago. Well, just avoid the bullets. But in any
Duck.
case, yeah, Duck. In any case, everyone, hey, listen, and have a fantastic evening. And we will see you next week. All right. And again, everyone, you cannot put a zucchini in your pants and try to get through security. Or you
It's not going
can,
to work.
but just don't wrap it in foil,
And it's
everyone.
going to hurt to sit down. I'm just guessing.
All right, everyone. Have a good night.